trying to get things squared away. Also, your favorite author, the people's author, if you will, has a pretty ripping cold. That didn't work either. Well, I don't know what happened, but my fancy background thing is not working tonight. So we don't get to see the little sparklies in the background. We should be able to see all of you guys, though, signing in here. Okay. Hello, Cobalt. Hello, Steve. Hello, 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 hello. Got to kick off my shoes. Sit a spell. Hey, Sean. As you can hear, still got a wee bit of a cold. Wee bit of a cold going on here. Trying to get everything squared away. Now, if you've not been here before, if you don't want to hear me jibber jab with the junkies and the fans, just fast forward that to 0, 0, 0, 0. And we will be right on top of the story at that time. Trying to get a footer going for the reading, but I can't seem to get it. So that's the way it goes. Richard Bennett in the house. Pam Weber. Pam caught episode 1 the other night and is now here for episode number 2. That is great. We're going to go to chat right now. And A's in the chat room, but her mic is off, so you may see her sitting there, but I can't read anybody's chat. So there is A. You can see her there. She is isolated in the other room because I have a pretty big cold. And, okay. I thought that... Hold on a second here. Checking a couple of things, a couple of settings here and there. Edward Rocco, hello. Rob Otto. Footer. I barely knew her. I mean, it's a Bingles line. I have broken my other computer. So there's all kinds of fun stuff going on right now. There's going to be a lot of coughing going on today, you guys. A lot of coughing. Hey, can you check your phone, please? A lot of coughing is going to be going on. Check the messages on your phone, please. Since A is here. Perfect. There we go. That's what I was talking about. Thank you. Now I'm muting you again. And A, is your computer volume on?
Not anymore.
Great. Okay, we're still getting a little luck. We'll figure it out.
My mic is on, though.
There, that sounds pretty good. Okay. Now, when you lean back, if you need to pull the mic a little closer to you to get that position right, it's totally good. That looks great right there. Wherever you are, you're okay. No, Donna, I am not okay. I'm totally fine. I have a bit of a cold. That's all. Bit of a cold. Go back to opening in a couple minutes. Now, all of you... No, Rob, I did not just send my wife a dick pic on the phone. I'm all flustered now. When we get to zeros, we go to story time. So, Jude Stenson's in the house. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for saying that while my Brolo is in the room. Appreciate it. Terry Davis. Everybody can see, if you can see Terry Davis's icon, he's got a Kraken's jersey on. Swear to God, one of these days we're going to open up Kraken's jerseys again. Yes, we're doing Restream. We're doing quarantine protocols. So I came home from Detroit where I watched the Detroit Lions win an awesome game against the 14-2 Minnesota Vikings. And it was an amazing experience. Fantastic. We'll talk a little bit about it after, maybe. Got to try and save my voice as well as I can for the read. But, no, Edward, this is not from screaming at the game. This is from a cold I picked up because of my my 2-year-old nephew. We took him to the Lego store. And at the Lego store, Lego World, there are all of these bins full of Legos. Also full of a lot of kids doing this and sticking their hands in the Legos. Hi, Tyler. Hi, Dr. Danny Baker, PhD. So, of course, being the fantastic, perfect uncle that I am, I reached into all these bins and was helping my nephew Rhett make various Lego things. And talk about patient zero. I might have skinny dipped into a Petri dish. It was just, and drank all the fluid in the Petri dish. I knew for sure I was going to get sick. And that was before the game when I was in, an enclosed environment with 65,000 other people. So A and I both knew this was going to happen. Vaughn Lowe, what's up, buddy? Little kids are Petri dishes. And we had many little kids jumping around the place. It was great. Okay, 44 seconds, and then we're going to go live. How do I always forget how to do this? We're going to go live. We get some more tea set up here. Cobalt says, it's all good, Scott. Today's sausage just has a little phlegm in the recipe. Phlegm in your sausage, always a great thing. Yeah, Marble Gargler, I did literally write the book. I should have known better. All right, let me get my headset off. Let's go to main. And, I forgot to show you guys. Check out what I got for Christmas. Woo! Whoops. Woo! Hopefully I wasn't showing my butt there. Hopefully I was showing my Shoresy jersey. All right. Let's see if we can get through this, y'all. And we are recording. And here, I'm going to give my balls a tug and get rolling in 1 second. Here we go. Previously on Slay, Lincoln and Billy collected a bounty at the Dubois Hotel, one of the oldest and nicest hotels in downtown Lumencia. Bingles the sex gnome and his assistant, Not-So-Tiny Tim, were there to clean up the remains of Meredith, a sexual predator, literally from the Schmegula species. Lincoln and Shitbird headed off to talk to Callista, leaving Billy to take Bingles and Tim back to the old stone church, where they can use the church's men's room to return to Cordis. During the fight, Magda used the ear cuff off the Lich and Lynchburg to see what Lincoln saw, to hear what Lincoln heard. She and Ariella are back at the church waiting for Billy's return. And now, episode 78 of Slay. $30. Rolling down I-47 on a high-handled, loud-as-hell chopper. Night stars above. The lights of Lumencia spreading away on either side. Wind chill forcing the temp into the low teens, but Billy had burned some filament to keep himself and Dragon nice and warm. This shit was tight. Dragon did the real driving, but Billy liked to pretend he controlled the big chopper. He felt so cool riding around the city, or at least he did when the bike didn't have a sidecar containing a couple of absolute purrs. So, Walt, Bingles said, shouting to be heard over the wind, we're almost back. How about you park this beast and come back to Cordis with Tim and me? It's game night. We're playing Guess the Orifice. D. Bella Boopa is hiding in a 5th level magic shade. We stick our hands in the shadow and got plans, Billy said. Sorry, I'm helping Magda with the t-shirt biz tonight. Only partly a lie. She always needed help, but rarely asked for it. Phooey, Not-So-Tiny Tim said. I'm really talented at guessing orifices. I could show you sometime. Billy suppressed a shiver. Thanks, Tim. I'm a little too busy with filament training these days. That one wasn't a lie. Training took up most of Billy's time. Between study, helping Mags, assisting on bounty runs, and getting the shit beat out of him while sparring with Link, Sorry, go back a little bit. Between study, helping Mags, assisting on bounty runs, and getting the crap kicked out of him sparring with Lincoln, Billy barely had time to take a shit in private. At least, The crazy schedule kept him from missing Delilah Drummond. Mostly, anyway. Phooey, Tim said. Double phooey. Billy glanced at the sidecar. Bingles leaned forward, arms outstretched, a smile on his face, the wind whipping his long white beard behind him. He had cast a warmth spell, too. Otherwise, his bare arms and shoulders would be so cold. Tim sat slouched next to him, a frown on his little face. Both gnomes wore half-green helmets with a spike on top, and dark steampunk-style goggles with oversized lenses and a bunch of broken clock crap all over them. Poor little Tim could not take a polite hint. None of the sex gnomes could. They hit on Billy way more than they hit on Link and Magda. Billy didn't know why. Bingles still tried with Ariella, but she wasn't around that much anymore. They drove past the 4th Street exit, which led into Billy's old hood. He didn't have fond memories of his days living in Tollingwood. Most of the positive stuff involved Grandma, but those fun times felt ruined by her lies. She had kept the truth from him, protecting him from Vestinian. Whatever. Through grade school, middle school, and high school, her protection resulted in Billy getting bullied due to his diminutive size. 100 knuckle sandwiches does not a meal plan make. He had moved on from Tollingwood. His new neighborhood wasn't any better. In fact, it was far worse, but he loved it so, and loved the life his home there gave him. Dragon turned off on the Factory Road exit. Minutes later, they were driving through the urban ruins of the Factory District, aka the Fatty. Back in the days of World War II, the Fatty had employed thousands of Lumensians. Now, the crumbling factories, burned-out buildings, and rubble-strewn empty lots employed no one at all. If, that is, you didn't count the bums, the drug dealers, and 4 people who ran a business out of a century-old house of worship. The Old Stone Church. Home, sweet home. From the outside, not much had changed. Same old church sign out front, most of its slide-in letters, once meant to give inspiring messages and announce service times, scattered to the ground, half covered in crusty, melting snow. Same old leafless trees, their thin, sickly branches coated in shards of wet ice from the last round of freezing rain. The church itself hadn't changed much either. Same big, rounded stones, thick with grime and dead lichen. The bell tower, still missing a bell. Slate roof pockmarked with missing tiles. Windows boarded up and covered with generations of graffiti. One new addition, though, the shed, a steel building the size of a 1-car garage, distressed to make it look as old and crappy as the rest of the exterior. A trio of battered padlocks weighed down the rusted chains looped through the shed door's handles. The "Beware of Dog" sign, with a silhouette of a dachshund on the left-hand door, was the coup de grace. Should I pronounce that? The coup de grace, sorry. The "Beware of Dog" sign, with the silhouette of a dachshund on the left-hand door, was the coup de grace, as far as Billy was concerned. Anyone who took the sign lightly was in for one hell of a surprise. Bingles dropped back into the sidecar as Billy turned off the road toward the shed. The dragon bike didn't slow. It drove right through the chain door as if it were made of mist. Actually, it kind of was, at least for Billy, Lincoln, and Ariella. Just inside the door, the shed's floor angled sharply down, became a concrete ramp that ran into a small underground parking area. 3 spaces marked with white lines. One for Lincoln's electric motorcycle, complete with a wall charger. One with a rust-eaten blue Subaru, with a sign on the wall that read, "This space reserved for the HBIC." And the final space, occupied by a battered white delivery van with a dented black driver's side door and a fading Frau Munda Groceries logo on the sides. The Subaru? A filament overlay atop a Porsche 911 Carrera. The delivery van? An overlay disguising a Rochelle-modified, heavily armed and armored Mercedes-Benz Sprinter. Billy could not wait to drive that bad boy and use the toys within. There was even enough room in it for Dragon to ride at full size, as long as she coiled up a bit. "What a run," Bingles said. "I'll ride with you anytime, Walt. With you, I mean." Sorry, gotta do that again. "What a run," Bingles said. "I'll ride you anytime, Walt. Oh, with you, I mean, ride with you." The shit-eating grin on the gnome's face made it obvious the error was intentional. Bingles tried to crawl out of the sidecar, but his little legs wouldn't reach. Billy lifted him out, set him down. "That a double entendre, Bingles?" "Double-ended entendre, maybe," the gnome said. "Twice the fun." Billy should have known better than to respond at all. God, but these guys were shameless and embarrassing. He lifted Not-So-Tiny Tim out, set him down, then handed them their duffel bags. "I've had enough dirty talk for one day," Billy said. "And for one night, too, before you guys make another pervy comment. Y'all can see yourselves to the bathroom?" Tim winked. "Don't want to join us in the bathroom stall, big fella?" Shameless, embarrassing, and exhausting. "You know, Dragon's probably hungry," Billy said. "And you guys being all bite-sized and all." Tim turned and ran for a green door, the only door in the small parking area, duffel bag full of Meredith's desiccated remains bouncing madly off his stubby legs. Bingles scowled. "A short joke, Walt. Not clever. It's hurtful. Is Ariella still here? Big Papi gotta get paid." Billy nodded to the Subaru/Porsche. "If her car's still here, she's here," he said. "Better make it quick. The head bitch in charge don't like to work late these days." Bingles left through the green door. Billy took a moment to breathe deep. He was finally free of those sex-obsessed cleaners. At least until the next run. Time to study. "Come on, girl," Billy said. "Time for Treatos." The big chopper and sidecar contorted inward, vibrated like a glob of black gel, shuddered in an explosion of sprouting onyx scales. A 15-foot-long coil of lethal muscle rose up, vibrating with excitement, long whispers shaking in time. Curls of smoke huffed out of wide nostrils and rose up to the ceiling. "Hmm?" Dragon snorkeled. Billy reached up and scratched under her big chin. "You bet, you sweet old girl. You did good, so you get treats." Billy turned his back, lifted his shoulder. "Hop on." Dragon serpentined in place, a flowing ampersand of potential violence that compressed in on itself again became a blob that popped in midair. A shaggy black dachshund flopped onto Billy's shoulder. Her long little body wrapped around his neck, waggly butt on his left shoulder, soft little head tucked under his right ear, her sniffling nose and eager eyes looking forward. What a great dog she was. Billy walked through the door and headed up concrete steps that ended just outside a men's room, which doubled as a magical portal to Cordis. Ariella stood there, Gucci purse over one shoulder, looking all good like she always did. She wore yet another outfit which somehow flawlessly merged legit businesswoman and MILF porn star. Her ever-present, gaudy, turquoise chunks and gold charms necklace somehow was a perfect fit for either half. She tapped the toe of one 4-inch black pump, pointedly looking at the turquoise-encrusted Rolex on her wrist. You were supposed to be back here 45 minutes ago, Billy. Is Lincoln down there? She'd used his real name. That meant Bingles and Tim had already left, or flushed on out, as Link liked to call it. Link thought it was funny. Link thought a lot of things were funny, and few of them actually were. He had to go see Callista, Billy said. The schedule's a goal, not a rule. We can't control what the mark does, Ariella. Things got dicey. It was touch and go there for a while. This shit is dangerous, man. She smirked. You waited outside again, didn't you? Like always, it seemed. Yeah, Billy said. I did provide a distraction, though. You should have been there. It was awesome. I was ready to go in. The smirk became a sweet smile, or at least as sweet as Ariella's smile could be, which wasn't very sweet at all. I know you were ready, she said. It's coming, Billy. You know Lincoln wants you to be prepared is all. Billy had been prepared enough when they had taken on Teddy Two Fingers, Agnetha, and Hymana and her insect hordes. Billy had been prepared, sure, but he had also lost his shit there and damn near burned Morgan Stone to death. They'd labeled his intermittent loss of control instances as oops moments. Billy did not want another oops moment. Maybe going slow was the right way. He wanted to do his part, wanted to fight side by side with Link, but Link wouldn't allow it. What good was Billy's supposed power if he couldn't use it? Yeah, he said. I know. How's Magda? How do you think she is? I'm heading home for the night. I might not be in tomorrow. I have a lot of client work backed up. Message me when Link gets home, will you? You know he won't do it. Sure thing, boss, Billy said. Drive safe. She shouldered her purse, headed down the concrete steps. Billy wondered, as he often did, if she made her heels clack that loud on purpose. When she drove out of the shed and through the fatty, any casual eyes would see the battered Subaru. Once she hit the on-ramp, though, anyone around her would see the tricked-out Porsche. Things had been different around here since she'd moved back. Things had been different around here since she'd moved back to her place and started her law practice up again. Maybe she would take the night off. If so, good for her. Billy didn't have that option. He had to get on the dark web. Dragon whined. Oh, sorry, girl, Billy said. Let's go see Auntie Magda. Then we'll get you that treat. It's what you wanted, Ed Harley, the witch on the screen said. No, Lance Henriksen said, his voice rife with regret and anguish. Not like this. Not like this. I see it. It's wrong. Maybe the new sound system was too loud. Magda hit the burbling blue bong again, breathing deep and holding it in. She set it on the coffee table, spoke without releasing even a puff. Link? Nothing. She tapped at her ear cuff. Can you hear me? Still nothing. Motherfucker, she said, letting all the smoke out. Sneaky bastard. Billy walked into the nave. Billy walked into the nave, dragon draped around his neck like a living, swishy-tailed dachshund stole. Sneaky bastard. Billy waved his hand in front of his face, his eyes narrowed. Who are you talking about, Mags? Billy didn't just walk into rooms anymore, he entered them. Like a too modest action hero who didn't realize people who dug men wanted to... Like a too modest action hero who didn't realize people who dug men wanted to slice him up and eat him like a 6'3" piece of chocolate cake. Magda blew the last of the smoke out of the corner of her mouth away from Billy. He didn't like his dog getting contact highs. On account of when Dragon caught a buzz, she tended to assume her natural 15-foot-long form and sleep for hours. I'm talking about Link. Magda pointed to her ear cuff. He turned off our connection. That means he's doing some shit he don't want me to know about, or he's doing someone he don't want me to know about. And maybe those were the same thing. Billy flopped down on the couch's right cushion. That was his spot. Magda on the left, Link in the middle, Billy on the right. 3 peas in a pod. Didn't happen that much anymore, though. Billy was usually either in his room studying or fight training in the basement, and Link seemed to spend more and more time away from the church. Come on, Mags, Billy said. Doesn't Link get some privacy? He just went out and brought home the bacon, you know? Magda stifled her anger. Yeah, I know, she said. I was there, remember? Magda saw thought flash in Billy's eyes. He didn't mean it, and he dialed it back almost instantly, but she saw it all the same. The look that said, but you weren't actually there, were you? All I'm saying is he had to go see Callista, Billy said. Maybe he wants to ask her if she can say hi to Sam. Maybe he wants to ask her if he can say hi to Sam. You know how Link gets about that stuff. Billy had a point. For all the hard, dangerous work Link had put in since Kelly Stroman's death, for all the money and treasure he'd brought home, his inability to free his only child haunted him like a His inability to free his only child haunted him daily, like rubbing a dog's nose in a pile of shit made from incompetence and failure. You can slay 3-headed, flame-breathing, 20-foot-tall lava hydras all damn day, but if you can't rescue your own 10-year-old son, what good are you? That was how Lincoln felt inside. Besides, Billy said, if he is banging someone, do you want to be in his noggin while he's getting horizontal? Magda shook her head, hard, but would that be so bad? She hadn't gotten laid in a long time. A little magical VR voyeurism might be a step up from PornTube. Hell no, she said. She tilted her head toward the big screen. Pumpkinhead Demon of Revenge is on, and the new surround sound system I bought is kicking. Billy glanced around the nave, his gaze lingering on the speakers installed up in the rafters. Nice, Mags. How much that cost? Magda picked up the bong without thinking, set it back down as soon as she did think. Too much, she said. But I can afford it. Last month, we sold more Fuck Ton of Nuts t-shirts than ever before. And the new Big Nasty shirts are blowing up in France. For some reason, I don't know. She didn't want to tell anyone the numbers, because doing so might jinx the whole thing. But in the last 6 months, she'd sold over 5,000 t-shirts total. And that didn't include the ball caps, mugs, and various tchotchkes Billy had recently added to the store for her. No, I still can't believe that's legal, Billy said. Doesn't Big Nasties have, like, corporate owners or something? Magda shrugged. The chain doesn't exist up here. Ariella says we can get away with it, and she knows the law, both here and in the patchwork. Billy lifted Dragon off his shoulders, set the pup down on the middle cushion. That's good, Mags, he said. Real good. He meant it, but his thoughts were already elsewhere, either on whatever magic study he had lined up or on the Droman girl. Maybe both. Probably both. The Droman woman, not girl, Magda thought, correcting herself. Kellius Droman had suppressed his daughter's age. When he died, she had gone from 13 years old to her true age of 23 in an instant. I'll watch the movie with you later, Billy said. I gotta go study. He again casually scanned the room, taking it all in. Place really looks different, doesn't it? It certainly did. Not so long ago, the nave had been all dark old wood and full of frigid drafts creeping along the floor like icy predators that fed on toes, that float around buckets set under persistent leaks. Now, white acoustic panels hung from the steeped, angled ceiling, hiding high-tech lights that could fit any mood. The projection screen was long gone, replaced by a 136-inch flat-panel TV set just far enough in front of the couch that watching it was like having the prime middle-row seats at a real theater. Leather furniture. Bookcases filled with tasteful knickknacks, a few books no one had read, and Magda's growing VHS collection of 70s, 80s, and 90s movies. No more beat-up guitar amp for a sound system. No more 55-gallon trash can in the center of the room overflowing with pizza boxes. The Nave didn't look like the Nave anymore. It looked like the screening room at some Hollywood producer's LA mansion. All that remained of the old ways was the beer pong table, although it had been refinished to erase years' worth of bloodstains. "It does look different," Magda said. "Kinda hard to believe it's the same place." In all aspects, save for the exterior, the old stone church had transformed from a dilapidated relic that should have been condemned to a straight-up mansion. "Totally," Billy said. "Way better than when I almost burned it down." Dragon let out a little growl. Like Link, Billy tended to focus on the negative, and when Billy did so, Dragon didn't like it. "Sorry, girl," Billy said, reaching over to twirl the dachshund's long, floppy ear. "You really gotta let that shit go," Magda said. "This place has changed, and so have you. Don't let your past define you, buddy." It sounded like a sage, comforting thing to say, and maybe it was, until another reactive, there-then-gone look in Billy's eyes threw the words right back in her face. A look that said, "You're a fine one to talk." He was right. But it wasn't the same thing. Not even close, and he knew it. Billy stood. "I gotta go study. Catch you later if you're still up." He strode out of the Nave, his broad shoulders slumped. Stupid kid didn't know how good he had it. He could come and go as he pleased. Billy's magical knowledge had already surpassed hers. Magda was a technician, someone who could paint by numbers, so to speak, where Billy was a true artist whose potential was a well so deep it might never be fully plumbed. He had to study on his own, mostly because they couldn't risk bringing another teacher into the fold. Billy had to keep laying low, stay hidden, keep being Walt every time he left these walls, lest Vestinian catch a whiff of his existence. Vestinian. The motherfucker responsible for Magda's scars, for Magda's agoraphobia, responsible for her being cramped up in the church like a panther locked in a cage. "Someday," she whispered, "someday, I'm gonna cut that bitch." Dragon plodded over, crawled into her lap, curled into a little ball of black fluff, and started purring in a deep, heart-melting burr like the miniature dragon she was. Magda slowly stroked the ridge of her nose running between her closed eyes. The little pup was so warm. "It's okay, girl," Magda said. "The boys don't get me, but you do. You always do." Dragon's purring presence made Magda relax some. She couldn't get high, well, higher anyway, with the pup there, but Billy didn't give a damn about booze. Magda had to admit, the side table-topped, wood-paneled dorm fridge on the couch's left side not only looked stylish and fit Ariella's overall decor, it also came in handy when a girl needed a drink or two. Or three. Magda reached over the armrest, flipped open the door, and pulled out her fifth of Belvedere vodka. She knew she should go into the kitchen and get a glass, but she wasn't about to disturb Dragon. And besides, drinking from the bottle had worked way back when, and nothing about that had changed. Alone on the couch, yet again, Magdalene picked up the remote and hit play. There we go. Just, a couple of flubs here and there. Throat only held up so well. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get a cough drop cooking here. Get that little piece of paper off so I don't choke on that too. You got to choke on it. Now, because we are in quarantine protocol, unfortunately, I do not get to sit side by side with the love of my life, but I do get to do this. Hold on, Pumpkin. Hello, baby.
Hey, how are you?
I'm okay. So now my side is completely changed too. This thing's crazy. I'll see if I can get this dialed in. Ladies and gentlemen, look who's here.
Hi, guys.
Why didn't that go off? You son of a bitch. We got problems. We got all kinds of problems.
We got problems. That's the only line of that song that I know for sure. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm very loud in my headphones. If you could give me a little.
I can back you off.
A little low. Get low.
How's that? Get low. Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
This was all set up beforehand, you guys. It's all right, though. It's all right, because this way I look extraordinarily tall.
That's okay.
You can do that right there. There we go. Hey, ho. No, don't change yours.
Oh, okay.
Put it back to where it was, please.
It's back to where it was.
Thank you very much. Turn that light a little bit away from you.
Like this?
Sure, that'll do.
Okay.
Can you, never mind. We'll roll with this. All right. And also, check out the chat room, you guys. Got A in the chat room. We got me in the chat room. Everything is hunky dory. What did you guys think of the episode? I hope you enjoyed it. Bill, we got a little establishing shot of Billy, a little establishing shot of Magda, one of Ariella as well. Ariella has sort of moved on in the past 6 months. She is now back to her own law practice and also managing things down at the old Stone Church.
Yeah.
Let's do some. Go, babe.
So I just, before we start rolling on deep cuts, I want to tell you guys a couple of things. People are saying that I have a great background. As Scott mentioned, we are in quarantine protocol. I am literally like 8 feet away from him in actuality, but I'm in the room next to us, which is our bedroom. So those are his spaces behind us. Second thing I need to tell you is, as you guys probably know, there are wildfires in Southern California. We are safe in San Diego at the moment, but we live about 5 miles west of Miramar Air Force Base, and it seems pretty evident to me they are clearing out the planes in Miramar right now and probably moving them to Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas. So you'll probably hear a lot of plane noise for the next hour or 45 minutes, and that's what that is. We can't do anything about it.
Oops.
There it is.
There we go. Did you guys hear? Tell us in the chat room if you heard the plane noises or not. I don't think they came across, so it's good for us to know.
Okie doke.
A is much quieter than Scott. What? That's crazy, Steve. I'm hearing A loud as heck. All right. Talk a sec, babe.
Yeah, I'm hearing myself loud as heck, too. I had to turn down my headphones for that very reason. So, oof. But yeah, it's a big Southern California day. So we're hoping for our friends in Los Angeles to be fine or as fine as they can be. I know a couple of people who know for sure that their house or their place where they live have been destroyed. And there was an earthquake in Malibu today, so that did not help.
No, that did not. There was an earthquake in Malibu today.
There was an earthquake in Malibu
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I gotta get some air cooking here. Someone in the chat room apparently said the bases are overrated, and I'm not going to go back and read that because you would be excommunicated from the Church of Siglerism forever. Hello, Tony. How you doing? Donna's in the house. Didn't hear any plane noises.
Good.
Now, Sean hears A louder than Scott. Steve, are you still hearing A quieter than I am or louder than I am? Maybe I misread your text.
And Dan is saying on YouTube we're the same.
Oh, we're going to pretty much go with what we've got right here.
Okay.
Also, I saw Rob Otto dropped a Grinch reference in the chat room. You can all go back and find that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I had that wrong. He talked about his poll, so that's all I'm going to say. Steve says A is and has been louder. Okay, great. Talk a little bit more, A.
I'm talking a little bit more.
A little bit louder.
I think we're good to go.
There we go. That should do the trick. That's what we're going with anyways.
Okie doke.
Everybody says A is louder, so I'm bringing A down. Talk one more for me, baby.
I hear a D79 says, I live next to an Air Force base and I can't even tell anymore. So I think we're probably
Ryan Minto, I'm in quarantine, my brother, because I went to Detroit to watch the Lions win against the Vikings. And while I was there amongst 65,000 people, I caught one heck of a cold. So we're trying to keep A from getting that cold. So conjugal visits are cut off and I'm in the gulag.
Sakes alive.
Sakes alive.
Sakes alive.
All right. Tyler, hold on. Tyler Miller asked a question. As pertaining to characters, do you build characters based on something bad they have to do, or does something bad come up in an existing character? I'm going to try and get a screenshot of that pumpkin so I can... Tyler, you're not my pumpkin, Tyler. A's my pumpkin. Sorry. Don't get jealous. Don't be hating. Don't be hating. All right. Baby, you ready to go to do our...
I am ready to go.
Excellente. This actually, I don't know. This kind of works pretty good. This is the way most podcasts are done with the two people vertical.
Yeah.
But you're just so cuddly. It's got to be around you sometimes. Okay, here we go. Let's go. All right, guys, that is it. We are now getting ready for deep cuts. As usual, there's no story content in this, so if you want to tap out, you can. But hang out. It should be a lively, delightful conversation. And, okay, baby, you ready? I got to get my recording on.
Yeah, let me set my timer. Give me a sec.
Open recent, deep cuts, turdy tree, close.
Turdy tree?
That's a nice turdy you got there.
Okay, you let me know when you start your intro. I will start the timer.
I think I got problems. And some other song, a person singing. Okay, baby, check.
Check.
Great, looks good. And we are going to go ahead and roll with this. And get this out of the way. All right, cool. Let's see. Here we go. Start that timer, babe.
Okay.
In the reader reviews of my books, I've been... right off the bat. I actually castigated today. Make sure you read the script so we get through it. And I flubbed literally the first sentence. Here we go. In the reader reviews of my books, I've been called every name under the sun. From bleeding heart woke leftist to far-right racist hate-mongering Nazi, from endorsing violence against children to promoting vigilante justice for the same, from anti-Christian commie to theocratic enabler, from toxic masculinity, patriarchal enforcer to soy boy beta male.
Wait a minute. You're none of those things. Why do people think you are?
Because my characters can be those things, can do awful things, can be awful people. Sometimes, to tell the story that needs to be told, they have to be those things.
The character is not the creator. But in art, sometimes characters do distasteful things. We'll talk about that right after this quick break.
All right, ready to roll?
I am.
Okay, let's go. Welcome to Deep Cuts, the bonus episode of the Scott Sigler Slices Fiction Podcast, where a sci-fi author and an audiobook narrator discuss things and stuff in the world of fiction and pop culture. I am Scott Sigler, sci-fi horror author known far and wide as the future dark overlord.
And I am A.B. Sigler, publisher at Empty Set Entertainment and audiobook narrator. And on this Deep Cuts, we're discussing how sometimes characters do distasteful things. So, we're going to do this. We're going to break it down. We're going to use 4 fictional characters or 4 fictional pieces of fiction and go from there. Are you ready to go?
I am. Let's do it.
All right, we are going to start with your favorite and mine, Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
Dr. Hannibal Lecter, the delightful... Oh, I forgot there's no political implications of Hannibal Lecter, for crying out loud.
Oh,
Dr. Hannibal Lecter, you'd like to have him over for dinner sometime.
I forgot to. Let me give you a little background. In The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter acts as a foil to Clarice Starling, highlighting her strength by contrasting his extreme darkness and predatory nature. They are a case of moral opposites that help tell the story. So I'm going to ask you a handful of questions, you as a creator and me as a consumer of entertainment, because I think you probably have a different curtain to pull back than I would talking about this. So my first one, we're talking about Clarice and Hannibal as moral opposites, and that's a lot of what they do. They seem to be maybe the same intelligence or close to it. They have the same dedication, but they're on opposite sides of the law. So that means maybe they're morally opposite. So my first question for you is, does Clarice shine? Does she become Clarice Starling without Lecter doing Lecter things?
I don't think so. Having watched the movie several times, having read the book, it seems likely that Clarice Starling would eventually percolate up to the top, the cream rises, and she would become a star in some context. But in the situation she's in that environment, she needs a boost. She needs her moment in the sun. And some of that is the male-female relationship within the department back when this was written, which is the early 80s, I think, is when that book was written. And they're very realistic about the difficulties of a woman getting up through the organization at that particular time. But she's wicked smart. She really knows how to manage things, except when she gets that connection with Hannibal Lecter, who sees in her the same level of genius that he has within him. He, in a way, takes her under his wing and starts to educate her on the more brutal side of things and the nature being red in tooth and claw side of the human species. And it is because she connects with him at that deep subliminal level, and because he is the highest profile criminal in the world within the context of that book. He's the big prize. And even though he's been captured and he's in prison, using him to go find another serial killer is the thing that gives Clarice her big boost and lets the larger world see the skill set that she has developed.
And from where I sit, it's also clear to me that Hannibal feels like he's met his match. And I don't know if this is clear to me, but I think that he might be hoping that he dazzles her so much she turns to the dark side. But at the very least, he sees in her an opponent that he hasn't seen before. And I think as she solves clues that no other detective has done in his criminal past, he starts to have more respect for her. So I completely agree about the taking under the wing thing, even though that's a little not how criminals work. I do think, as we mentioned, as we have mentioned, the idea that everyone is the hero of their own story has never been more true than with Hannibal Lecter, I think.
Yeah, totally. And dialing back in the topic that we're talking about, Thomas Harris, the author of Silence of the Lambs, has to get his headspace inside of a character and become a character that is not only a manipulator and a liar and a genius at both of those things, he's also a serial killer and a cannibal. And it is the job of the author to present all of these things as 100% believable and real. So when Thomas Harris puts on that skin suit, if you will, he has to be able to walk around in it, dance in it, and operate in it, and do so in such a way that the reader doesn't see the connection between the author and the character. So it's gross. I've written characters that do awful things, and when you really try to make that awful person a sympathetic, believable, whole character, you feel pretty gross.
I can only imagine, because I feel like sometimes watching or reading some of your characters, which we will talk about in a second, it's squicky, but I feel like you don't leave things in a story that do not matter to the story. We can move on from Hannibal Lecter or combine this with the next character I want to talk about, who is your favorite and mine, Kayla Myers.
Yep.
Kayla Myers, one of the villains in Earthcore. I believe I mentioned that Hannibal and Clarice are moral opposites, and they are. There are a bunch of things, and they are clearly protagonist versus antagonist, but I think this is true of all of these characters in the fiction that we'll talk about tonight. So I'm trying to pull out a little bit of a different thread. And I think for Kayla Myers, she uses psychological manipulation in a way that we don't see a lot, especially for female villains.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she has a broken psyche. And these things contribute to what she does in Earthcore and how that motivates and moves the story forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to talk too much about Kayla. I assume most of you will know, or you should read Earthcore to find out. But I will say she doesn't operate, to me, she doesn't operate in the same society, say, as Hannibal Lecter does. Hannibal Lecter knows the rules of the society he's in, and he breaks them when it's convenient. Kayla Myers, I think she might have at one point known the rules of the society that she operates in, but it's very clear, especially when she's talking to her higher ups, that she has lost that plot. She is no longer operating in a society with the social construct and contract that we would have in a normal society.
Well,
and I'll just say one more thing for anybody who hasn't read the book. One of the specific things I want to talk about that is very hard to read is she has no moral quandary predating on children.
Correct. And that is a side note in the story. So you talk about the world she's in is different than the world Hannibal Lecter's in. But I think they're both modern day analogs. And Kayla Myers, being a former CIA agent, NSA agent, my bad, NSA agent. In this NSA and Earthcore is a slightly different NSA than we all might be familiar with. NSA is largely signals intelligence, codes, stealing other people's codes, stealing other people's signals, false information, all kinds of things like that. But there are a lot of people, myself included, who believe that some of the things that NSA does will never be heard about and might even be darker than the shit the CIA does. There's less accountability. It's almost like there's a secret department within the NSA that does awful things. That's where Kayla Myers lives. Kayla Myers is absolutely a dedicated American. She's a patriot to her country. Oops, let me back on here. She's a patriot to her country. And in her mind, she is taking on the responsibility of doing the work that most people won't do that needs to be done. So she is hero of her own story, but it's very similar to Hannibal Lecter. Thomas Harris has to get in that brain. I have to get in Kayla Myers' brain and make her do all of these things and present it as perfectly sane. She doesn't think she's crazy. The things she did to the kids back in the day, excuse me, that all had to be done. And it's a little bit gross. I mean, she is a torturer. She is a rapist. She is a liar. She does anything it takes to get the job done. And in the context of Earthcore, sorry, it becomes all for the cause of her hopefully getting to rejoin the NSA, the place that really utilized her skills and her psychology and mentality to the strongest extent.
Yeah, for sure. I think she also might be, by the time we see her in Fitzroy, pretty far afield from... She might have lost the thread a little bit, which happens if you're operating inside your own set of societal structures. We see that quite often with people who think that, in real life, people who think that they can get away with whatever, killing their somebody who lives in their house and putting them in a cooler in the basement and thinking that that's just going to work out for them. They have lost the thread of how society actually works, and almost always are working. And Kayla is working as a lone wolf, and that also hampers her ability. She doesn't have anybody mirroring her self back to her to know if she's functioning within society's norms.
Recluse Mage in the chat room says, did she enjoy it, derive pleasure from the acts, or hate doing it, but still do it for, quote, the greater good? She absolutely believes she is doing all of this for the greater good. The work she does initially, as Earthcore begins, she can't find employment where she wants to be employed, which is by the United States government. So she takes her very particular set of skills and takes them out into the private field. And the second she gets a chance to try and get back into that field, to try and get back into the work for the government, she does that. When what she could do, if she was really despicable in her own mind, was take advantage of the natural resources that the Earth Core Company finds and make herself fabulously wealthy. That's the thing that I think is the most interesting thing about Kayla. She understands all the numbers. She knows exactly what's going on. She knows Earth Core is looking at literally $1 trillion find, and she doesn't think about making herself rich for 1 second. Not for 1 second does she think about herself. All she thinks is, I need to go back to where my country can use me to its fullest extent, which I think makes her, in particular, that's what makes her a good guy in her own head. Did she enjoy doing all those things? I think probably. Yeah, I think and the other part of this conversation is when characters do things that, we're not really expecting as a creator. I initially wrote her in just the van scene and had her doing her thing. And then I'm like, this seems farcical. I need to go back and establish her past. What could she have gone through to make her this much of a predator, this much of an altruistic, patriotic predator, if you will? And going back and writing those scenes, super gross. Super, super, super gross. And a lot of the stuff that was in those got left on the cutting room floor. It was even worse than what you guys have read. And being influenced by Stephen King a lot and trying to write those fully developed backstories and having to put myself in her position with her sisters and with her abusive father, it was gross. It's still yucky to me to this day.
So Rob, Otto, your co-writer in the chat room, says that every villain sees themselves as the hero in the story. They do what they feel needs to be done that no one else is willing to do. But earlier, he actually had another really good comment, and it scrolled past it. So give me just a second. Sorry, Steve. Sorry, folks at home. It was something about a truly a villain who believes in what they are doing, even if it is societally or morally wrong, is very charismatic, and it's very easy for that villain to draw people to them. And I think that's such an important point, because to your point, you can't create a truly evil character and have it be just all farce, but it is super easy. We see it all the time in the real world, where very, very charismatic, terrible people, the terribleness is not the thing that people see. The charisma and the being drawn to them is the thing that people see. And that's a way that they can get away with a lot of the things that they do.
And we see that around us every day in the world.
Yeah,
there are people, just reprehensible, selfish people who don't give a damn what they have to burn down to get what they want. And when they get what they want, then that changes. So they're always pursuing something new. And it doesn't matter how many people they hurt, how many people they dismiss, etc. They're going to go ahead and get theirs.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Since you are suffering a little bit, we're going to keep this a little bit short tonight. So I'm going to introduce our next villain.
Let me go back real quick. Answer David Lamb's question. Aren't most serial killers charming and charismatic? Excuse me. Is that you or me? That you?
Yeah.
No, that's not the case at all. Many of them are very socially awkward, and the killing and the causing of pain is a way of acting out urges that they can't understand and can't comprehend. There are many serial killers who are extremely charismatic. Ted Bundy and a few others out there, the Green River Killer, that could convince. They were con men. Con men and charmers. They convince anybody to do anything, except what they wanted to convince was, hey, sugar, get in the van. It's going to be fine. So next question, baby.
The next character that we're going to talk about is Loki, the god of chaos and eventually the god of evil. I'm going to talk about the MCU Loki because Loki is a very big, broad stroke. But in Marvel Comics and in the MCU, Loki's primarily portrayed as a chaos agent character, meaning his primary motivation is to create disruption and disorder, often through trickery and manipulation, rather than outright evil. His title as the God of Mischief perfectly encapsulates this aspect of his personality. He does become an agent of chaos, not evil, so it's a little different than what we're talking about, but he still does a lot of distasteful things, and I posit he has absolutely no choice. to the creator who writes him and to the people who watch him, it is part of his humanity, as weird as that is to say, that he really cannot choose to be good. He is chaotic. That is his role in the universe. So him trying to be good is always going to fail. And as he gets older and understands his role more, I think he uses that as a manipulation point, which makes him a little more evil than just chaotic.
He's an interesting one to me because Hannibal Lecter kills, let's say, 14 people, right? Farm Girl is killed, let's say, 5 or 6 people throughout before the story starts. I think everyone in this room would agree that those two characters are probably more frightening and more evil than Loki, who in the context of the MCU kills hundreds of thousands of people, enslaves people, is committing fucking genocide, right? But because of the milieu of the MCU, because of the tapestry that they paint, the more lighthearted, somber yet lighthearted nature of things that comes as part and parcel of the superhero world, we love Loki. We love Tom Hiddleston. He's super charming. He's super fun. When he goes off and does his own show, all is forgiven. Hey, now he's doing a good thing. Forget about the fact that he destroyed half of New York City. The death toll from that last final scene alone had to be in the 20,000s. Property damage, massive problems all over the place. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So from that context of a creator, making characters do awful, evil things sometimes is a lot easier because it's far more superficial. We're not going to see an MCU documentary on the 17,000 people who died during that last Avengers battle, and the orphans, and the widows, and the widowers, and all the other stuff, and people whose small business got smashed, and they're out of a job, and now they're going to be homeless and poor. You don't hear any of that stuff. If it's my book, you're probably going to hear some of that stuff, because my stuff's a bit more visceral and real. But there's Loki, far more powerful, far more damaging, far more evil, yet writing a Loki character, I don't think people feel squicky and icky writing a Loki.
So as a creator, I want you to think about these 3 characters that we have presented thus far and give me comparison points for them when we come back from this quick break. And a quick reminder, if you have the ability to listen to these ads that might pop up, there's only 1 or 2, and that really helps the show. We'll be right back after this.
Was that prompt for the audience or for me, sweetie?
That was for you.
Okay.
So we'll come back in, and then I'll repeat the question.
Sounds great.
And are you ready?
1 sec. I got to find out where I'm in the script here. Okay. And we're back. Okay. Here we go. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to Deep Cuts.
On this Deep Cuts, we are reconciling character choices when characters must do horrible things. Let me take that again.
Okay.
On this episode of Deep Cuts, we are talking about when characters must do terrible things to move the story forward. And right before the break, I asked you to look at the 3 characters that we have talked about already: Hannibal Lecter, Kayla Myers from EarthCore, and Loki, the God of Mischief, and tell me what you think from a storyteller's perspective they have in common for the purposes of telling a rich story.
Excuse me. I think the thing they primarily have in common is, like everyone else on the planet, they have their own set of morals. They have their own moral code, their own morality. And every one of these characters we've talked about, and most bad guys in all the great works in general, believe they are doing the right thing. Or if they don't believe they're doing the right thing, they excuse and justify their actions because it is something that is beyond their control. Society has thrust this upon them, which isn't fair. And that's really the thing that defines evil characters. And if you take that to a large enough extent, the example I always use is the guys who flew the planes into the Twin Towers. They did not think they were doing something evil. Most likely did not think they were doing something evil. They didn't think they were doing something bad. In their moral code, they were doing the right thing. they were making a huge sacrifice for the betterment of their particular chosen culture.
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, that's really the thing that most of these characters have in common.
Yeah, I love that example, because one of the things that, for me, as I'm reading an evil character or trying to see a balance or why this character is there in a story, one of the things I think about a lot is Occam's razor. So for Farm Girl, for the people who flew into the Twin Towers, for Hannibal Lecter even, comparing themselves to society at large would tell them very, very quickly that they're probably not going to get a planet with virgins or whatever, because they're a very small minority. And if this was going to work, many people would be doing it. And I find that for me as a reader or a consumer of entertainment, it helps me sort of figure out, like, oh gosh, I hate this character, but I think I see how they fit and why they're here in this story. So I'm going to hold on a little bit longer because they're outliers, at least to me. So let's see. The last, this is going to be kind of a big one. So this is the last group of people that we're going to talk about. And that is the gang at the Old Stone Church. And I need you to stay with me for a minute.
All right.
Because I don't believe that they are evil, but they are outliers in society, because substance use disorder plays a huge part in the goings on at the Old Stone Church. And substance use disorder often impacts a person's life and a person's ability to function in society. I am talking, you guys know everything that's going on, even if we don't exactly know what gobbers are on this plane. Substance use disorder significantly impacts a person's life. It damages health, it damages relationships, careers, finances, property. But probably the most significant impact is often on the brain of the person who is suffering from substance use disorder. So I want to talk about whether or not the means that Lincoln, for example, takes to the end of taking care of his dad and trying to do the best he can and trying to get Sam off the shelf, if those things are a moral quandary, and if the substance abuse is a character, maybe more than a character trait, that adds depth and divisiveness and stuff like that to Magda, to Magda and Link mostly here in this situation.
Well, I won't lie. The substance abuse in the story transformed into something else as I started writing it. I think I started writing Slay almost as, this is kind of like a co-ed frat. In a lot of the stuff you see in the Old Stone Church when it starts out, you know, the trash can full of pizza boxes, the beer pong table, people sleeping on the couch, people getting high all the time. Like that stuff, a lot of that stuff is influenced by my fraternity back in college, when people don't really realize how hard they're hitting the bottle a little bit, maybe. And I knew that Magda's agoraphobia and being stuck in that house had an underlying cause, and I knew what that underlying cause was. But it wasn't until I started to get more into the story that also started to become a little bit yucky. It sucks, right? Having to keep her penned up in here. Well, now I have fallen in love with this character, and I want this character to flourish and succeed, but I'm stuck. She's stuck where she's at because I'm stuck where she's at, because not everybody gets to flourish and succeed in this world. There are people who have substance abuse issues and never escape them. I think the majority of people who have substance abuse issues never escape them. What I didn't really anticipate from this was writing it well enough that people, listeners of mine and readers of mine who have difficult substance abuse issues, that the story would bother them at a much deeper level than I could have seen coming. And we've continued on with it. Now we see some of these characters trying to address this issue and grow out of it. But all the monster hunting stuff I've seen, you know, the superhero stuff I've seen, sometimes there's a little bit of lip service, like, oh, Spider-Man drinks too much or something like that. I don't really see a lot of work where it gets down into the muck with them. And then you have to think about, okay, so that is what makes it more realistic. These people are going out and chasing, 3-headed lava-breathing hydras and taking on wyverns and stuff. And it's all campy and fun stuff until, they come home and they got to take 10 Percocets because their shoulder's completely destroyed from this fight. And now they're off the wagon again. Now they got all these, and well, once you've got the Percocets, you got to hit the Jim Beam, man. I mean, they just go together. And then I only smoke when I drink. And all of these things start to snowball for the characters in Slay until it gets to a point where it is not only affecting their performance in the workplace, it is putting loved ones who are willing to go to war with them in danger because the substance abuse issues have compromised their ability to fight. So there's a lot of stuff. And I think there's also a lot of service, veteran issues going on in there, service people issues going on there. When you have to go to some other country and experience things that nobody should ever have to experience, and you try to find the best way you can think of to cope with that, and the coping mechanism is prevalent and right there in front of you. When you get out of that situation, what do you do then when that coping mechanism comes home with you from that foreign land? So there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, and I think there's a couple of points from my side of the book, I'll say. I see Link dragging hard the day after a Gobber's bender with Magda, and having to go do his job and having to get up and function and having to head to Callista's because his son is on the line, suffering all the way through. I think there are many, many, many people who consume this story, who read this story, who will have had a day like that, where, they had a couple too many the night before or whatever. And even if that wouldn't be classified as a substance use disorder, it helps us relate to those bad decisions that Lincoln is making. And the other thing I want to say is those bad decisions that Lincoln is making, or Magda is making, weren't necessarily bad decisions when they started. I think that's another thing that I can personally relate to, having had a very stressful night, having had a very heartbreaking night, and deciding a glass of wine before bed is going to be a helpful thing for me. That doesn't sound like a problem, and it isn't a problem for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it becomes a problem over time. So Lincoln and Magda choosing substances to help manage their ex-Rixator life because they no longer have other support makes sense in one way, and it makes sense in the moment that they first choose it. But substance abuse and substance use disorder escalates. That's the thing about humans, or Rixators, I guess, too. We don't get to keep control of that. And in the case of alcohol, on this plane, I'll say, on Earth, losing that control over that doesn't solve your original problem either. It only gives you two problems to solve. It
winds up giving you two problems to solve, yes. Yeah. And in A and I's families, both, we've had, plenty of instances of people who've gone down that wrong path and never were able to come back from that wrong path. And that path was where they ended, when they were going out and trying to find ways to cope with it. And then there's all the other thing, the deeper scientific side of it is a predisposition to chemical dependency based on your genealogy and physiology. We don't get into that in Slay all that much, although we do have some generational psychological issues going on. Link's difficulty expressing his emotions, his difficulty accepting that shit happens to everybody and you're not a superhero, bro, even though he is a superhero, which is the side of it. But it's still, that is the bedrock of Slay, is watching these people who have these fantastical lives and go out and do all this action hero shit and live as superheroes. And then, dude, they're hungover like balls the next day. There's nothing they can do because they just went too hard and they know they're going to go too hard the next day, and then they got to go out and work again. I think that's really the thing to me that makes Slay really vibrate and really jump.
Yeah, and I will add the characters we've talked about are some of the characters in Slay, Loki, the god of mischief, Kayla Myers, and Hannibal Lecter. And we might have to take Loki out of this since he is an actual god.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of these people, their evilness has to be tethered to humanity for me on this side of the book to absorb it in a more useful way. Like you said, if they seem like a caricature, I'm going to treat them as a caricature. If they seem like a farce, I'm going to treat them like a farce. So they have to be somewhat human. And things like Kayla's inability to sort of click herself back into society where it is right now, as opposed to where she thinks it will be if she can just do what she needs to do to get everything set right, is not dissimilar to Magda thinking, I don't need anything, I'm fine. I don't have to work on my psychological scars. I just need more Jim Beam. Those are two sides of the same coin in a certain way. And for both of those, I think having a humanity that they can't control makes them more palatable and consumable to me as a reader.
We have one comment in the chat from David Lamb. What about Greedock the Splithead from the GFL series? He's a pretty brilliant and charismatic, but also incredibly dark. As readers, we're horrified by his actions, yet are drawn to him again and again. Now, that's a little different to me because he is an actual alien. And while the Quith species and the human species have a lot of overlap and their Venn diagram coverage is quite large, he ain't like us. He ain't like us. So his ability to go into that deep, dark place and do the things that he needs to do within his moral structure, there's going to be some things that we simply do not understand and cannot relate to, or most of us cannot relate to anyways. But what that does is, like the Clarice Starling conversation, the Hannibal Lecter conversation we had earlier, the way Starling and Lecter interact and develop each other. And that's what really makes Clarice Starling shine and elevate to the top of her profession is this awful person she has to work with. Quentin Barnes becomes a vastly better manager of his life and his environment because of the shit Greedock the Splithead puts him through. Greedock the Splithead not only helps Quentin Barnes become a star, Greedock the Splithead helps Quentin Barnes understand how to cope with being a star and how to understand being in that spotlight and how to not be just such an aw shucks kid from the boonies with the cornstalk sticking out of his mouth. Quentin grows enormously because of Greedock's dark side. And as you guys will see in the next 3 books in the GFL series, they become much more alike than unlike or dislike. They become much
more similar than dissimilar.
More similar than dissimilar than when the series starts. And what that's going to get to eventually is Quentin's going to wind up in some situations he simply would not survive if he hadn't been forged in the fire that is Greedock's selfishness and evil.
Yep. And I also think that for many characters, and certainly these that we've talked about, we need a couple of things. We need a toehold so that we understand how we can access this character, because I am not a god of mischief, right? I'm not ever going to be a god of mischief. But we also need them rooted faithfully in the story as it is. I think if you had somebody like Kayla Myers, that personality, that viciousness, play the wicked witch in The Wizard of Oz, that would not make any sense because, Glenda the good witch steals her sister's shoes or friend's shoes or whatever when she dies, and nobody ever does an investigation. Nothing. She's just evil, wicked. The house falls on her. It's over. And Glenda steals her shoes and doesn't give her a trial or doesn't give her an investigation or anything. That doesn't sound very good to me, but she's the good witch.
Yeah, that's a vastly more simplified black and white code, which you see in a lot of movies from back in that time. Pardon me. And I couldn't say when we started to have more complex and nuanced versions of good versus evil, when that started to become more prevalent in entertainment. I know for me, it's definitely the Punisher comic book was one of the first ones I experienced that really started to take a hard look at how far does a hero go when the hero is writing his own rules, and at what point does this become antithetical to a civilization, to a civilized society. And the other one that was huge for me was Battlestar Galactica, the reboot. It was sensational because I didn't know who to root for. Both sides had an equally valid and just internal moral code within them, and that was really what made it magic. So those are two works that have influenced what I do, and Stephen King is definitely in there as well, because he most of the time back in the day did a pretty good job of, while the bad guys were somewhat cartoonish and overly simplified, like they do evil for the sake of doing evil because they're evil, there was a lot of stuff going on there too, where you were dealing with their pain and trying to understand how they got to be the person that they got to be.
Yeah, one of the characters that I remember doing that for me is John Rambo from First Blood. Mm-hmm. I am a military brat, and military officers, peace officers, all those at the time were all good people who all got good accolades and attaboys. And then I watched First Blood on HBO, and he was a trained killer, trained to do that, and is executing his training, and he's not wrong. And that was, for me as a teenager, kind of difficult. Like, it is not okay for you to set up all these traps and kill people. But it is, because it is in the context of that world.
Are you saying I have to remove the spike pit that is below our front door?
I think you should probably consider removing the spike pit, because nobody has drawn First Blood from you. So yeah, I think that one of the conclusions I'm drawing here from what you're saying is that to tell, well, I guess I don't want to draw a conclusion. I want to ask you if this is accurate. To tell a compelling story with fleshed out characters, do you need that antagonistic protagonistic relationship?
Well, it's a thing in storytelling called tension. And there's a couple of schools of thought where no matter what the scene is, if the scene doesn't have tension, then you throw it out because it's no good. It doesn't provide any benefit to the story. And one way I've seen it described, I think this is from Save the Cat, is two people enter a room, and this is all conceptual. Two people enter a room, and they have to go through each other to get to the other door to leave the room. If there's two doors on one side, two doors on the other, and people can walk in and pass each other without having to move around each other, that is a scene that you throw out. So there's got to be some form of tension. There's got to be one person who wants to achieve something and one person who is an obstacle to achieving that, or the other person wants to achieve something that is diametrically opposed to the first person. And that can be anything. That could be anything from, like, it's a sword fight, we're going to have this fantasy duel, to it's an argument over which kind of spoons we're going to put on the wedding registry. All of this stuff is what builds a character, and it's the tension, it's the arguments, it's the difficulties, the push and pull. That's what makes the characters real in the reader or the viewer's mind. So yeah, you absolutely, with the kind of work I do, you've got to have that antithetical relationship between the protagonist and the antagonist. Or if I do my work really correctly, there's just two protagonists. They have to walk through each other to get to the other door, and neither one of them will get out of each other's way. So it's untenable.
But I do think that there are some of these moments that you're talking about, this interaction and this tension, where, for example, watching Bingles' crew clean up the Old Stone Church at the end of Slay Book 1 and having to clean up after Dragon is unpalatable to a human person in human skin. At least it was for me. Even though it was comedically done, those are difficult kind of concepts to deal with that I'll never deal with, hopefully, in my real life ever, 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 ever. And so that's another outlet for me to sort of get closer to the characters or understand the characters better without having to live that life.
Yeah.
So I do think that wraps things up for this very snorfully episode of Deep Cuts. Hopefully next week you will be feeling better. Are you ready? Do you have any other notes before we wind up?
I do not have any other notes. That is it for this episode of Deep Cuts.
And on our next episode, we'll have an empty set update session and a mini Q&A. If you have questions that you would like to ask in this mini Q&A, please send them to info@emptyset.com.
And if you are listening to the podcast, we have updates, text alert updates. You can text the word SIGTEXT, SIGTEXT, to 855-955-5095. We let you know every time we're going to have a live episode. We let you know when new books are coming out, all kinds of good stuff. You also can subscribe to our newsletter at scottsigler.com/newsletter. Fill out that form. We won't spam you, and we won't sell your stuff to Facebook, because now that's a whole other giant shit show. That is it for us for this episode. We think you're all fantastic. We said goodbye. Goodbye. Great job, babe.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. I know this was a little bit different, but I think it made a really big difference, certainly for me, because I'm still healthy 2 days later. So appreciate the strangeness. Hopefully you guys can deal with that until we get back next to each other.
And while we're in the chat room, I have to adjust cameras and lighting and all of other stuff. What do you guys think about this format where A and I are kind of up side by side on the screen, which there's pros and cons to us being together side by side, and there's this. What are your thoughts? Would you guys rather see this very popular format, which most video podcasts are using, or would you rather see us both on the same camera? And there's Biddy. Hi, Biddy.
Bonus pup for you guys still in the chat room.
Yeah, bonus pup. All right. Chris Grawl likes it when we are actually sitting together. I mean, I like when we're sitting together. Have you seen this girl? Recluse Mage says, put her on the other side, might not even notice the change. Dan Baker says, but the discussion was excellent. David Lamb loves the new format. There we go. All right. Ian Sequel says, better together emotionally. We will give it some thought here, but probably we're just going to be side by side because it's super fun for me. Paul Carlson's in the house.
Yeah, he's been
Paul.
in the house the whole time.
I did not see Paul in there. Welcome, buddy. Good to see you here. All right, everybody. We think you're fantastic. We do think you smell an awful lot like flowers. I am going to go cough a bunch and pass the F out.
Good night, guys.
Good night, guys. See ya.
Bye. Bye. Oh, you didn't like